Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are jumping into a product review that I am super excited for, and it's also one of the first times in a very long time I'm doing a single product review video. Today we're going to be jumping into the new Urban Decay Stay Naked Quickie up to 24-hour wear multi-use concealer. I did pick this up myself, not sponsored, not PR, but this is one of the first complexion launches in a while that I was actually excited about. So I knew I had to pick it up and give it a try. So if that's something you're into, make sure to keep on watching and don't forget to subscribe because I upload every other day. That'll be the best way to stay up to date on all the fun stuff I'm posting. So if you want to jump into a concealer review, wear test the works, stay tuned. All right, so this does retail for $33. I did pick it up myself, and I did get it in the shade 30 CP. CP being cool pink. I have obviously very pink undertones, very cool toned, so that's what we're going to be playing around with. Now, I have not done my base yet, and I wanted to kind of talk about the product while I put that on, just so you can see sort of what I'm putting underneath, because that is just as important as the makeup itself. If I was to put this on top of an oil slick of products I don't like, how could I expect this to do well? So I'm starting off with the One Size Secure the Blur Primer. I like this because it smooths everything over and gives us a nice base for everything to go on top of. My skincare I already did, but that's going to be the primer. And then, as always, I'm going to take the Beauty For Real Tinted Moisturizer, the MVP, in the shade Medium 1. I'm going to be taking that on a sponge and a brush. Starting with a brush, as always, I'm going to put a thin layer all over my face. And then once I am done applying it with the brush, I'm then going to take the sponge and just use that to pick up any extra product and smooth everything over. The reason I chose this tinted moisturizer instead of a full coverage foundation is it is hydrating. It has a sort of a dewy satin finish. It is medium but buildable coverage. So you'll see I can still see my skin. So that's going to really make sure that we're setting the concealer up for success by kind of getting rid of some of those imperfections, but also I can really see how that concealer builds up because the foundation is not so full coverage that the concealer doesn't need to do anything. Now, I know that it comes with a kabuki brush in the cap, but that to me is not the type of applicator I like. But I am going to grab a brush version of a similar kabuki just because it's a little easier to get in there with a longer wand. This is a little bit too clunky for me. But if you like having a brush on your concealer, great for you. Now, I am going to wipe a little bit off on the inside. It is a large doe foot applicator, very similar to your Tarte Shape Tape style wand. And we're going to start with just a dot here and a little out here just to lift. And we'll kind of see how that works before we add more. I'd rather build it up than, put on way too much right out the gate. So I'm going to go in soft stippling motions first and really pat that in. Right away, I will say that this has some pretty bold coverage. So either apply less or I'm prepared to go in with my sponge because a sponge is a great way to diffuse some of that product. But it is covering, it is brightening nicely. I'm going to switch back to the sponge and just blend that over to see what that does. So right away, you will see that the under eye is quite brightened. Now, it's a little brighter than I typically like, but that is going to be more on the color selection than the formula, because it does look pretty good. It is sort of peeling in this under eye area. So you'll see, I'm not sure if you can see, but it is sort of like the coverage is moving around over here a little bit. There's no oil on my sponge, nothing like that would be messing with the formula, but I'm still getting a decent amount of brightness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the other side and we're going to apply the same place we did, but I'm actually going to take it a little bit lower as well with a tiny bit more. It might be one of those products where if you shear it out too much and you lose the rest of that coverage, it does sort of break down the pigment. That's not unheard of with concealers, but I'm going to skip the brush and go right into the sponge for this. Yeah, so right away when I skipped the brush and I went right into the sponge, it definitely made it sit a little bit nicer and didn't give me as much of an issue. I'm going to take a small amount on the lid just to neutralize color. I will end up using this as an eyeshadow base today as well. And we're definitely getting a nice finish. I think this could be a color that could work. It's a little, again, brighter than I would like, but I'm going to blend out some of these creases, then I'm going to just powder it quickly and I'll be right back. All right, so we are all powdered. I think with a little bit of powder on top, it does look really nice. It is a very nice finish. That area where I layered up a little bit more because I was having that issue with the coverage, I'm not seeing any issues now. There is a tiny bit of coverage that I felt like could have been a little stronger on the nose. So I will say that this is definitely not as full coverage as the Tarte Shape Tape, but it is a really nice finish so far. I am going to wrap up my makeup off camera. I'm going to be honest, I'm filming like a couple other videos. So by the time I'm done filming, I think 3 videos, I will be back. It's probably going to be somewhere between 2 and 4 hours, and we will do a check-in. All right, so it wasn't as long as I thought it would be. It's only been about 2.5 hours. I did an unboxing and hated pretty much how everything turned out. So I'm going to ignore the fact that I hate the way the eyes look and that the lip is not my favorite, and just concentrate on the concealer. So there's really no creasing or settling into the under eyes. Obviously, I have a little bit of texture. It's not accentuating it. It's clearly there, which most concealers, that's kind of normal for me, but it's not drawing attention to anything I don't want to draw attention to. It is settling a tiny bit in the forehead line I have, which I'll be honest is pretty common for, most things I try. If you have a line, odds are something is going to settle into there, but I did just pat it out and it kind of reactivated with a wet sponge. So it's something you can touch up if you need to. That being said, I feel like it went on really well. I did change my lip like 3 times. So I'm going to take a little down here because every now and then I do like to take concealer to clean up my lip line. And we're going to try that. So I'm going to take a tiny bit under the lipstick, grab a concealer brush, and I'm just going to softly blend that. Not all concealers work well over powder. Some do. I'm not going to fault it if it doesn't, but it is nice to know if you can do that with certain things. And that actually went over quite beautifully. I'm going to set that down just because I set down all concealer, but I think that this could rival some of my favorites. Now, the issue I had earlier where it was sort of bunching up, I will say I'm not seeing any issues with pigment anywhere. The one spot where I had sort of that breakdown on my nose that I spoke about earlier, obviously that is still a problem, but it doesn't look like it got worse. Now I'm going to do one more touch up really up here where I'm getting a little bit of a shadow on the inner portion of the nose and add a tiny bit more on the bridge of the nose. Again, this is not really going to be a deal breaker, but it's one of those things where I like to see if it's going to make a difference. Like I said, it instantly is brightening and it's not giving me any issues on top of powder, which I do really like. Most of the time, it's that holy grail saying like, do not put powder or cream on top of powder. That's not always the case. There are certain formulas that once they dry down, you can absolutely play around with them on top of or underneath powder. And the opposite is also the case. Once the powder sort of warms up on the skin, or you just take a little bit of setting spray, it will allow you to put a cream on top. And I think that actually cleaned up very nicely. Now, again, it's been like 2.5 hours, and I do really like how everything still looks. Again, I don't love the lip or the eyeshadow, so we're going to ignore that altogether. But like this area right here, where it was a little bit on the like gray side, tiny bit of concealer brought that right back to life. And that was some fallout from eyeshadow. I was playing with purples. That is not an issue with the concealer. Now, obviously, this is something I think I'm going to play around with a lot more. But as of right now, I am going to say I think this is definitely worth picking up. It really brightened the under eyes. It did correct nicely. It's worn pretty well. I think that I feel like I keep looking at the things I don't like from the unboxing video I did, that it's drawing away from the things I do like. The one thing I also will say is I did try it as an eyeshadow base, ended up wiping it off and went in with an eyeshadow primer instead. So not something I think I would recommend as an eyeshadow base, but still works really well on the face. I'm going to say that that's going to be our final thoughts. I will be playing around with this more, and if you have any questions, sound off down below, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!